Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com. In today's podcast, I wanted to talk about goals for 2022. And I know most of the Big Four accounting firms, or all of them, are not on an actual calendar year, but this is a good time to discuss goals for 2022 because I think personal goals and Big Four goals are often different. I know they are for me. A lot of times in the Big Four, you have to pretend that you have insane goals. You want to be promoted next year, the year after that. You want to learn this technical thing that everybody else is obsessed with learning. You have to follow this pattern. And a lot of times that's what your goal setting in the Big Four accounting firm is just a loyalty test, I guess I would say, for the Big Four accounting firms to make sure that you get it. But to me, a lot of times those goals can be useless for personal purposes because you'll drive yourself insane sometimes if you put yourself on the same path as everybody else, but you don't actually want to do any of that and you burn yourself out because at the end of the day, your fastest path to getting promoted or by meeting the firm's whatever goals, ESG goals, diversity goals, volunteer goals, it'll be driving yourself crazy and it'll lead to you quitting. So I think you have to think of your own goals, and then you also have to think of the Big Four goals separately. You have to think of how you're going to keep your sanity. When I think of Big Four goals, what I think of is trying to make as much money as possible in as little amount of time as possible, while also keeping your sanity. And that might be hard. You might have to make less money some years or a lot of years to keep your sanity. But I think the default goals for most people in the Big Four accounting firms is to get promoted, to make partner in a certain amount of years. But you can lose your sanity because a lot of those goals mean sacrificing tons and tons of your time and setting your hair on fire and going crazy and being on call all the time, and it might not align with your personal goals. So sometimes you might have to step back, and I think you might set certain goals to the Big Four accounting firms, but actually not chase them as fast as everybody wants to chase them. But you don't need to tell people that either, because if you don't buy into the Big Four plan a lot of times, and I think people get resentful and people set mental limitations on you for you. And when they review your performance, you need to have certain goals, the Big Four accounting firms, and have separate ones for yourself, maybe to keep your sanity. But you don't need to tell everybody else about how you hated the prior year and this year you're just going to do less, or you want to take a step back. I think you just have to manage that in a professional manner depending on your team. Now, some people you might really trust, but I think in the Big Four accounting firms, there's so much people that aren't genuine that you don't want to necessarily say that you don't have the craziest of goals, because that's kind of the Big Four standard template. Because the people ask you your goals, but there's also set goals for the Big Four accounting firms. There's some that are set for you, like utilization, certain client sales, revenue, getting things in the system, working on certain clients. So they want you to have your own goals, but in reality, it's like you're not really independent of their goals either. So I think that's why people get stuck on this treadmill, and there's huge turnover at the Big Four accounting firms. Another thing I want to talk about in a goal perspective for the next year is we just saw that the Big Four partners paid themselves millions of dollars in the UK. Deloitte was the only one that got over £1 million, but around the world, the partner pay at the UK for the Big Four accounting firms is over $1 million in most countries. So, and this year, another goal for people is to make as much money as possible. You should be progressing extremely quickly this next year on revenue, especially if you're a talented person, because the problem with the Big Four accounting firms, or with partners, the Big Four accounting firms, is they see their employees in large part as fixed cost, and there's really an upper limit on how much you can make until you make partner. And once you make partner, there's still a limit, but it's not as bad as an employee. So I think you need to make as much money as possible. And I think the Big Four accounting firms should try to get their employees as much compensation, or their talented ones, as much compensation as possible, and you should search out for and negotiate a good increase in compensation over the next year, because the partners just increase their salaries and payouts by 20% or almost 20%, if not more. And I don't think they did that across the board for their talented people. But I think they view their employees more as a fixed compensation and theirs as variable on the business. But the business can perform a certain amount or certain way, and there's still a cap on how much employees can earn. And as an employee, for your own goal, you need to make it a goal to get paid extremely well over this next year, just like the partners did for themselves. So don't get caught up in the rat chase. Don't psych yourself out. Make goals that are attainable. And I think another good goal too would be focusing one technical area and getting as much experience in there as possible. And I don't mean just one project. Try to get as much experience in that project as possible, and do that every year. But those are my thoughts as far as getting ready to set goals. You should be thinking about goals. If you don't think about career goals, at least think about some kind of personal goals to get better at something or to make more money. Just to make sure that you're not burning yourself out is the way that I would think about it. And maybe that's one of your goals as well. But we're getting close to the end of the year. You need to make sure that you're looking at your goals as they pertain to the Big Four and as they pertain personally. That's the podcast for today. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast to get future updates, and check out the show notes for helpful links. Thanks for listening.